Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you that aren't familiar with me, my name is Daniel Pino, and I am a long-time Microsoft Access MVP. Now they're called Microsoft Office App MVPs, but I came on board with Access, and still to this day I'm an Access MVP, even though I do know knowledge, obviously, of many other Office applications. Today we're going to discuss a newly discovered bug with the quote-unquote new Microsoft Access Modern Web Browser Control. Now, I guess for the vast majority of people, this truly won't impact them, okay? Because I'll admit, for the average user, what do? They go to a website or they load a single HTML page and that's it. That said, in my view, this still remains a major bug because of the simple fact that this is very, very basic, fundamental, it's not even programming, it's just basic functionality of a web browser. And what is it? It's quite simple that the web browser control, the modern web browser control, does not support parameters in the URL. And this is something we see used everywhere. And it would be of great value to the web browser control. Why do I say that? Because I was trying to use it yesterday, so that just proves that there's a need. I was trying to develop a nifty new tool I was hoping to share online that used data from the database with media support in the web browser control. But for this to work properly, I needed it to take the parameter from the current record in a form. Therefore, it would load it properly in the web browser. However, this doesn't work. I've looked at other ways of automating it, but they always involve requiring user interaction. And that is not something that will make this sample demo that I was trying to develop here work. And it does work fine in Edge. So it's only when you migrate over to Access that this bombs. It truly is a Microsoft Access, a modern web browser control bug. So what am I talking about? What am I talking about when I talk about things like a parameter? Well, if you look here at the bottom of the article, I had a link. I did create a feedback suggestion on the subject. Now, I'm not doing this on all the bugs I found. There's just too many of them. I, at a certain point, just somewhat surrendered to the never-ending slew of bugs with this control, but I did create one for this. And I have a link here to Mozilla's documentation on what a parameter is. And as you can see here, they illustrate it quite beautifully. It's anything after the question mark. So everything before the question mark is the URL. It's the website. It's the domain and the page. But then when you put a question mark, now you're passing information back to that page. So you have a key one here, which is whatever label you want to give it. Could be file, could be ID, could be, Toyo. It doesn't make a difference. It's a name that you're going to attribute to what comes after the equal sign. Okay, so it's like the variable name that we'd use in VBA. And then after the equal sign is the value for that key one. And then you can use the ampersand here to then concatenate multiple keys. So these are parameters. And these are accessible to the page because it's part of that URL, so it can be read in real time, and therefore the page can act on those values. And that's what makes it so valuable, so powerful. A concrete example would be in YouTube. Every time you go on YouTube and you look at a video, you'll always see it's always the same URL here, the same domain and page, but then they're changing the parameter of V, so video. And what video do you want to view? It's this video this time. So that's how parameters work. So now imagine being able to use this in the web browser, where you could pass information from your database back to the web page directly. And imagine you're sending it, let's say, a file that you want to render in the web browser. Any file, images, media, whatever. Imagine you're passing it some type of dimensioning so you can resize the content at load without having to do anything. So the possibilities are somewhat endless when it comes to that. You could use it with Google Maps, for instance, for mapping purposes. There's a whole slew of possibilities here, but at the end of the day, it's a bug. It doesn't work. None of that will be possible currently. And it's a pretty big oversight at the end of the day because, like I say, this is fundamental, truly fundamental. Let's just take a very brief look at it, and then we'll move on. So I have this very simple database here. And if we look at it, what have I done here? Just a couple bogus entries where I'm just showing you an example of a parameter. It could be anything. It really doesn't make a difference. File, and then you could do, C2 point / temp / some file dot, whatever, txt. It can be anything. It can be file C2 point / temp / some image dot jpeg. It could be, you could do something like width equals 1,000. And then you could do an ampersand, and you could do height equals 600. So you see how this works. Now I'm just building up a few examples here, parameters. It makes no difference for the illustrative purposes we're doing here because it won't work at the end of the day. If ever Microsoft does resolve this problem, I'll be able to demonstrate even further how we could implement this and really make some remarkable things. But what I'm doing here is, on a record, I'm showing you 3 examples of, using parameters and why this doesn't work. So in the first one, let's take a look at what I've done. Is just a normal demo. This will work. And what is it? We're just going to load this HTML page. We're not doing anything else. Forget parameters. We're just going to load the basic page just to demonstrate that, yes, that page is accessible and works fine. Now we move on to, okay, let's add a parameter, hard-coded. So forget the record in the database right now. This is just a hard-coded value. So I've got the exact same web page, except now I'm adding the parameter. So I've got that question mark, my key name, and then the key value. Okay? And then the third one here is, let's use the database now. So now we're going to do that question mark, but instead the parameter is going to come from our record. And that's where that parameter from the table comes from. Okay, so if we come and look, the parameters here, that's what's going to get passed to that URL in real time. So now if we open it up and we run it, you will see, given it a second to process, that initial page does exist. Now it is looking for that parameter and it's not finding one because it's normal. We didn't include a parameter in the first example, right? We were just loading the bare page. And the 2 examples, the hard-coded or the dynamically generated one that comes from here, both bomb. There's no content whatsoever. It's not that it doesn't load that parameter. It doesn't load the page at all, which is even a worse bug when you think about it. And if you open either one of them and you look at the content that's generated, it's the standard bogus blank web browser control HTML that you always have. So it in fact is not loading my blank page that I requested in the first place, regardless of the whole issue of parameters. So not only does it not handle parameters, but it can't even load the basic page to begin with. And just to show you, the parameter HTML is this guy here. Now, if we remove the parameter portion, we get the exact same result as what is here. Okay, so we know it is rendering that page properly. It's when we add the parameter that things then go awry. And here you go, you add 1, 2, 3, and as you can see, it is able to read that parameter and it processes it in real time on the web page. And that's what I was after. I was after passing information here and being able to then use that to do something. Okay? So it would be great for handling media, for instance, or processing text files and data. So the power of the internet, the power of HTML to do these things exists. There's no issue there, okay? And I have very basic coding to make this happen. It's a bit of a technique here for reading parameters, and then I simply have a function where I go and get that parameter that I've asked it to read. So I told it, go get me the parameter entitled ID. And that's what we've got here, ID. And if I had it named something else, well, then I just change here ID to whatever the name of the variable I'm after. And then ultimately here, I actually run that command. So this isn't rocket science. This is basic HTML, basic JavaScript, things that work traditionally, but sadly break down in Access, making, what could be some truly nifty features that we could develop simply not possible presently. So yeah, for me, this is a major bug. It's just one more limitation of the modern web browser. It's sad. It had so much hope for this control, and every place I turn, it's turning into a nightmare. Just to put things into context for a second, if you go back to my main page, just for instance, and this is not a complete list by any means. Like I said, I stopped logging errors, but look at the quantity of bugs that we've flagged, and these are just the ones I've flagged. This is embarrassing at this point, but anyway. So we'll see. We'll see if the suggestion does anything. Feel free to upvote it. We have to hope that at some point they're going to start listening to these feedback items and actually doing something. But I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. The air is a little bit deflated out of my balloon here. It's just every time I try to do something, try to come up with a new demo, try to give some new capabilities to Access to the community, I spend days, I'm not exaggerating, working on things like this, trying to figure out how to make it work. It is a struggle with the modern web browser. There's lots of things that are problematic with it just from a development standpoint, caching and not reflecting changes. So, it really is a battle at time to try to build framework. And then even when you do manage to build the framework, you end up with something that doesn't work. And it's painful. It's a painful process, and it just makes Access look so poor. So I don't know. Definitely, it shows once again how poorly this new control was tested and evaluated, and how they only really aim to suffice the bare minimum. And that so many issues, to this day, if I bring that back up for 1 second, to this day, when you come into something and you right click on it and you do inspect, you get brought to the generic page. You do not get brought to where you should be. You have to do it a second time. Now it brings me to the right line. And yet, if you come in Edge normally, outside of Access, and you press inspect, it's going to bring you to the right location right off the bat. See the difference? So, and this is something, for instance, that was flagged, I forget how many times, right here. This was flagged how many months ago? 10 months ago. It still hasn't even been addressed. So this is where I lose a bit of my my eagerness to report things and my optimism at the end of the day. When this control first came out, I truly was optimistic. I was looking forward to this. This was long overdue. We were still using the Internet Explorer control, for crying out loud. This was going to be the leap forward to bring Access into the modern day. And everything is a struggle. Anyway, I'm mumbling on now. You guys all know this. Anyone that's done any serious work with the modern web browser is fully aware of this. And now I've made you fully aware of this latest issue. Like I say, it may not impact a lot of you out there, but it does impact people. And at the end of the day, in this case, it's stopping me from being able to offer to you, to the community, some new nifty demos that could have come out of this and would have potentially extended Access's capabilities and integrated some really interesting features that are not natively there. And that's the whole point here of development, and what I thought new controls were about was to bring new capabilities and new features, and once again we're crippled. So yeah, please, if you don't mind, take the second of your life, literally 10 seconds, to go here and simply upvote by clicking the vote button. And hopefully Microsoft will pay attention and resolve this, because this is just a simple parsing issue. And they should be able to resolve this with minimal effort. But then I've thought that of many of these items which still remain unresolved to this date. So we'll see. Anyway, let's move on. Next video, hopefully be more optimistic. And I'd like to thank you all for being here, watching my videos, and we'll see you in the next one. Like, share, subscribe. As always, your support is greatly appreciated. Take care, everyone.